Hello Year 12 and welcome back to your first media lesson on Letter to the Free with me, Mr. Ashley. So as always, you'll need a black pen, a green pen and some paper, and you'll want to start writing down the 5 a day for me. So pause the screen and get those things together. Make sure you've got a nice quiet space with no phones, turn it off, and then you want to be getting ready for that 5 a day. Excellent, so I'll just remove my mug there. Right, so you want to be now filling in these 5 a day, as always, writing it in full sentences, filling in those gaps where you can. Even if you're not sure, give it a go, and you never know, you might surprise yourself and show that you did really know it all along. So set your timer, 5 minutes, and away we go. Excellent, so here are the answers coming up then. So pause the video once more with your green pen, going through, ticking the ones that you got right, correcting any that you got incorrect, and really focusing on this idea of gender being a performance. Okay, excellent work there on the 5 a day and thinking about the first 2 weeks of the cycle and that focus on the adverts there. So today's lesson, we're moving on to week 3 of the Knowledge Organiser, week 2 of your online learning, and we're looking at the first of our 2 music videos, Letter to the Free. So it's worth saying at this point you want to make sure that you have watched both the video for Letter to the Free and watched and done your Cornell notes on the history of African Americans. If you haven't done those 2 things, you need to stop this now and go and do those first, because this lesson will operate on the assumption that you've got the knowledge from those 2 tasks. Okay, so if you have watched them, fantastic, keep playing. If not, make sure you go back and do these first. Okay, so learning objectives today, we're looking at those historical contextual factors that inform Letter to the Free, but also current political, social and cultural events and those contexts which have helped influence the music video itself. Okay, they're really key to understanding and unlocking what this video is about. It's a fantastic video, but it's got so much depth to it that you really need to understand. And at times this lesson will feel probably a little bit like a lecture, and it will take more than an hour to complete it. So if you need to at any point stop, and I'll say when's a good point too, but if you need to stop and continue at another point, that's absolutely fine. Break it down into 2 lessons that will be about 45-50 minutes each. Okay. Oh, there's the warning there. I already said it. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is you're going to pause the video for me, please, and you're going to copy down this Knowledge Organiser point written for the soundtrack of 13th, Letter to the Free, as an ideological protest song documenting black culture and legacy of slavery. Common, a pioneering cultural icon, contributes to the divisive political and social issues of contemporary America by focusing on the black codes and highlighting the mass incarceration of black Americans. Okay, and a bit of key vocabulary there at the bottom. Okay, so once you've copied that down, moving on to the next slide, and a quick stop and drop question for you. How does this Knowledge Organiser point link to Gilroy's post-colonial theory and black Atlantic culture, which you were looking at in Mr. Cole's lesson earlier this week? There's a sentence starter for you there. Give yourself about 2 minutes to do that, please. Excellent work there, Year 12. So let's have a look. I've linked this to the Knowledge Organiser point that you want to be learning for this week, and it links to Gilroy's post-colonial theory because it's exhibiting that black Atlantic culture which has been born out of racial division and the histories of sufferings to highlight the plight of black Americans. Okay, so 2 and 1 Knowledge Organiser work for you there. And then we've got the video here. You'll want to re-watch that. I've put it into a tiny URL form if you want to copy it across, type it out, or it'll still be in the Google Classroom for you to access there. Okay. What I want you to do is once you've watched it through once, on a second viewing, just make quick notes for me on the following. Who do you see in the video? How are they represented? Where's the video being shot? Why do you think they chose this location? And what did you notice about the language and how it links to this idea of black Atlantic culture? Nice one, Year 12. So hopefully you enjoyed watching that as much as I did. Fantastic video there, Common really on form. So 3 questions for you where you're going to reflect specifically on the representation that you see in that video. So which representation theories could you apply to the video and why are you choosing those ones? You can go back to cycle 1 as well and the theory that you learned there. Which adjectives would you use to describe the representation of African Americans in the video? Justify your choices. And which adjectives would you describe the representation of America itself in the video? And remember, you can link to the language being used in the lyrics too. So I'd set yourself a timer, probably about 5 minutes for these, answering in full sentences as always. Okay, great. So at the end of the lesson, I'm going to ask you to take some photos and upload them. So I'll have a look at what you've got there and we'll look at that moving forward next week. Right. So just to give you some of that context, and I'm going to throw quite a bit of information at you here. It'll all be written down. I'll be saying it aloud, but you also want to make sure that later on when I ask questions about it, you are free to come back to these points to kind of remind yourself and jog your memory, because I know it's going to be a bit of a brain dump now. Okay, so Letter to the Free was directed by Bradford Young, who was the cinematographer on Selma, and the video has the camera moving at a slow, aching pace through an empty prison where Common, the singers Andra Day and Bilal, and other musicians perform the song in different spaces around the prison. Throughout the clip, we also see the recurring image of this black square suspended in the air, and in the final shot, it's framed as an empty space in a field, which you can see just below here. So Common himself is a black American cultural icon. He's always maintained a political and social concern in his output. And at one of the most charged periods in American history, the video Letter to the Free is presented as a contribution to the divisive political and social issues of contemporary America, or in 2016, and a sense that he is attempting to draw attention to these issues, initiating a new wave of protest music. The global commerciality of much urban black music had for some years led to the loss of much of its political and social content, and even the racial protest that was present in early rap and hip hop. However, even artists as commercialised as Beyonce had in recent years turned to using their music to voice a renewal in political issues. So, for example, her Formation video and her performance of the song in a Super Bowl halftime show was widely seen as controversial in linking the discriminatory treatment of black communities in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina to the ideas of 1960s militant black power movement. It's the idea that whilst in its early days, rap and hip hop very much commented in quite radical ways on the political and social context of the time. That kind of, as it became more popular as a genre, that kind of edge to it was lost a little bit because people were worried, producers were worried that it would compromise their sales. However, as we started to see some of these artists come to real global dominance, such as Beyonce with a huge worldwide following, she's decided actually I could use this platform that I have to my advantage to raise some of these issues that affect me and millions of other Americans. So with events like the Ferguson shooting and similar issues dominating American news, these issues of civil rights, police brutality and ethnic discrimination have become the subject of mainstream music and artists again. And it's within all of this social and cultural context that Letter to the Free was recorded and with the accompanying video produced. And it's undoubtedly a product of 2016, and you can see a photo there of the 2016 Ferguson shooting and the riots as a result of that. And that continues to resonate today. Here we are 4 or 5 years later, and these issues show no signs whatsoever of going away. So the song Letter to the Free was written for Ava DuVernay's Netflix documentary, which focused on the historic legacy of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, an amendment made in the wake of the American Civil War in the very early 19th century, with the idea that actually the 13th Amendment was supposed to emancipate or free the slaves in American states. However, it actually led to the mass incarceration and imprisonment of these newly freed men and women and children. So, theoretically written to outlaw slavery, the 13th Amendment had the effect of paving the way for local and state law reforms that created loopholes to enable anti-black laws to come into place, and these were known as the Jim Crow laws. And they effectively enabled the continued enslavement of black Americans, but instead of working on plantations, they are actually just imprisoned. So the so-called black codes introduced at state level in the southern states provided for forced labour as punishment for petty crimes that in reality only applied to the newly emancipated black slaves. So these laws, you wouldn't see them being applied for the same crimes that white people were making. Instead, they were used to imprison black people again and use them for forced hard labour, essentially sending them back to being slaves. So I've got a gap fill exercise for you here. You want to be writing this out in full and trying to put the missing words into the right places. Just to let you know, on that top 2 lines there, they are 2 separate words that you want to include in there. And you also want to be noticing the word of the week, ideological, also in there as well. Okay, so pause the video, let yourself write these out, try and fill in those missing words using the ones below, and then unpause the video, play it again to see the video answers in a second. Okay, so here are the answers. Letter to the Free is an ideological protest song written by Common, who is considered a black American cultural icon. Written for the Netflix documentary 13, which examined the mass incarceration of recently emancipated slaves as a result of the Jim Crow laws, it follows a trend of rap and hip-hop artists using their platform to raise political and social issues. Those 2 words can obviously be changed around there to social and political, including police brutality, civil rights and ethnic discrimination. And well done to anyone that managed to fill in all of the missing words correctly there. Okay, so we now want to deconstruct and apply the next knowledge organiser point for this week. And that it's, although it was written in 2016 following the election of Donald Trump, the music video for Letter to the Free has added poignancy in light of the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, which responded to anti-black police brutality, but also exposed the sheer scale of systemic racism in America. So a couple of terms there for you. Poignancy is the quality of evoking a keen sense of sadness or regret. So actually, although this video is now 4 or 5 years old, it seems even sadder to think that actually the situation hasn't improved at all. And systemic racism is the way racism operates throughout a society. We're not just talking about one-to-one interactions. We're not just talking about one particular institution or one particular individual that might show racist traits, but actually the idea that it pervades throughout a society. So, question for you then to apply this knowledge: how have the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 added to that poignancy of the 2016 video? And then an extension for you too: as a black artist, why might Common have been inspired to write this song? So give yourself, I'd say, 4 or 5 minutes on your timer, have a go at answering these 2 questions in full sentences, applying the knowledge that you've built so far in this lesson. Fantastic. Well done, Year 12, and I look forward to seeing those responses once you upload them to Google Form at the end of the lesson. Okay, so just some more reflection questions there, this time focusing on the music industry itself, and looking at that kind of increased understanding that you now have of the contextual factors around this video. Try and answer these 3 questions in full sentences. So, how might personal politics have an influence on an audience's reaction to this particular media product? Which significant historical events will affect the reception of this video? And finally, which significant modern social and cultural events will also affect the reception of this video? So if you were sat today watching it, what do you need to understand? What will help to affect your reception of the video itself? Okay, fantastic. So again, I look forward to seeing what your responses are for this, but hopefully, you're getting in these ideas, and if you haven't got it, you want to add it with your green pen around, this systemic racism that really goes back to the way that Africans were brought over as slaves to the Americas, their continued subjugation, even once they had been emancipated through the 13th Amendment, and, ultimately, never really receiving any kind of parity with the white population of America, which has obviously boiled into the events that we've seen over the last 10 years with things like the Ferguson shootings, the way that the black communities were treated following Hurricane Katrina, and just ultimately if you were a black American watching this video, it would resonate very strongly with you. Now, hopefully you've got a more detailed understanding of these contexts as well. You can see the power behind this video too. Okay, so if you we're going to break this lesson into two parts. Now would be a good time to stop as we move into the production of the video. But well done to anyone that's got that kind of stamina to keep going now. And it's not impossible to do, but you might just need to give yourself a bit of a pause, and that's absolutely fine. Let me just move myself out of the way here whilst you write down for me this definition of mise en scène. So translating from the French for setting the scene. In media studies, it refers to everything in front of the camera. So set design, lighting, actors, anything that you can see, the idea that it's deliberately been put there on purpose. Okay, and once you've got that written down, you want to be thinking you want to be thinking about what we've got in the box below. So there are many ideas that could be discussed in this video, simply in terms of the mise en scène and the use of media language. So I've got here, it's a mosaic of highly stylized images. So the use of black and white invokes a real feel, as well as this notion of seriousness. The sequences shot in the cells and the exercise yards are very stylistic, as are the background details of bars, cell bars and signs. So all of these points work to construct a heavily referenced institutionalized racism. So, it's built into the prison system, it's built into the justice system of America. It echoes the slavery and the exploitative southern states. These black Americans are still imprisoned. It also constructs the roots of expression of an early emerging black American culture and the oppression as well of this black culture. So if we have a look then at some of the media language, because the lyrics of this video are inherent to the close study product media language, okay? So if we have a look at some of these quotes here. We're staring in the face of hate again, the same hate they will say will make America great again. So you've got that campaign slogan that you'll no doubt recognise from Donald Trump. Slavery's still alive, check Amendment 13, and thinking back to what we were just talking about earlier in this lesson and the 13th Amendment, which, although the slaves were now free, were actually still able to be imprisoned for very petty crimes. Black bodies being lost in the American dream. So this idea that the blacks communities very much feel separated from that American dream. For America to rise, it's a matter of black lives. So that link there to the Black Lives Matter protests. Prison is a business, America's the company, and shot me with your ray gun, and now you want to trump me. So, two presidents there, two Republican presidents being referenced very explicitly there. So just a quick task for you then, if you want to please pick 3 of these lyrics, and I want you to copy them down and explain how they relate to the historical, social and political context of the music video. Okay, I don't mind which 3 you go for the ones that you feel are most accessible. And then once you're ready, we'll move on to look a little bit more detail at Presidents Reagan and Trump. Great stuff, year 12. Okay, so Presidents Reagan and Trump then, there's this explicit reference to both of them in 2 lines of this, the lyrics. They were both television celebrities before entering politics, and despite not being taken seriously by the media, they garnered huge support amongst the American public after running on very similar populist platforms. Okay, so actually these 2 presidents, a lot of similarities between the 2. Reagan, nobody thought he would, they thought it was a joke when he announced it, and Reagan won an absolute landslide in America. I think nearly every state in America ultimately voted for him. I think it was the most comprehensive election victory in living memory. Donald Trump, obviously we know now that he has not won a second term despite his allegations that he did. However, his first election win, whilst definitely not a landslide, and in fact didn't even win the popular vote, is very carefully constructed and targeted election campaign that allowed him to be successful. And again, ultimately people thought it was a joke at first, but he's proved how serious he was about that and endured a first term in it. Both of them were Democrats before switching to the right-wing Republican Party. They both used the same slogan, Make America Great Again. They were both attacked by protesters during their election campaigns, which garnered more support. They used straight talk and humour to get directly across their messages to supporters. Reagan at the time was the oldest president ever. Trump now trumped him to become the oldest president himself, although Biden has now beat that record again. They're the only presidents to have ever had divorces. They were both pro-immigration but against illegal immigration. They have so many parallels between them that Common couldn't help but make that explicit point that actually, is anything even changing right now? Okay, and then finally we've got this idea of the symbolism between this black square, if I move myself out of the way. That black square in the video represents the injustice of the prison system and may also reflect the actual black people imprisoned within the United States. It's clear in the opening scene where birds fly outside that they're reflected on the surface of the black square. This may symbolise how the prisoners are trapped inside the confinements of their cell with no knowledge of when they could get out. The fact that there are never any cutaways from the black square forces the audience to acknowledge and reflect on the issues at hand for even longer. And this is extremely noticeable in the final scene where we see the black square at a different angle for approximately 24 seconds. It's unusual for a music video to have the same shot for such a long period of time. However, it's effective given the context of the video. This is because it highlights the fact that the problems surrounding injustice and racism are still present, and that regardless of how long we attempt to ignore it, the problems still remain. That black square is not going anywhere. Okay, so now it's time for you to show off what you've learned in this lesson. So we've got 5 questions for you here. What's the intention of the video? How has it applied mise-en-scène to create meaning and response? Which issues have created the ideas of the film? How does the imagery of the black film represent the lyrics? How does the imagery of the film represent the lyrics? And what does the black square symbolise? Okay, so I'll give yourselves 8 to 10 minutes to have a go at answering these, making sure you're writing them in full sentences, and then getting ready to send them to me at the end of the lesson. Okay, great. Well, fantastic work today, Year 12. Thank you so much for your dedication and for logging on and completing that today. Don't forget to complete the Google form, which will be underneath this video. Make sure at the end that you hit submit. If you don't hit submit, we don't know that you've done the lesson. I don't know how well you've understood the lesson. Okay, but yeah, fantastic work. There's a lot of information there that's packed right down into this video, which really actually hopefully you found that if you watch the video again now, and I'd encourage you to keep watching it, it would all come back and you'd unlock, and you've unlocked all of that information there. Okay, so thank you once again for logging on. You're doing really well, and hopefully I'll get to see you again soon. Thank you very much.